And with that in mind, you started the Stop the Violence movement?
Yes, but that most people equate the Stop the Violence movement with the death of Scott, only because of the timing of it. The record, Stop the Violence, the actual song, Stop the Violence, which was written, which appears on the By All Means Necessary album. This is the album I did after Scott's death. The song Stop the Violence appears on that album. I wrote that song for Criminal Minded, but because of the subject matter, it didn't go. It didn't match the revolutionary, ready to go all out image that Criminal Minded was putting out. Stop the Violence is a compromise record. It's a record asking you to tone your aggression down. That wasn't fitting for Criminal Minded, so it didn't go on there, but that was written first. If you could find a record by a group called Jam Rock Massive, I first did this record for that group called Jam Rock Massive, and it was done when Criminal Minded was out in '87. But then when Scott passed, Warner Brothers reneged on the deal. They said that they wouldn't do the deal. Benny Medina said, I wanted a whole group, quote. And so I was back with B-Boy Records and with nothing. And so I got this attorney named Jay Kramer, and he linked me up with a guy named, well, wait a minute, let me back up. The manager of Latin Quarters, who was also the guy paying us. This was like the number one guy paying us, the most frequent money. His name was Mike Goldberg. He was the manager of Latin Quarters. And he was paying us. And he loved hip-hop. He loved it, not only for the money that it was making, but he also had an ear for it. He was an older man, too, by the way. And he had an ear for it. He knew who to put on stage. And he used to tell us, you guys are going to be huge. You guys got it. Don't let these people tell you nothing. You got it. And he introduced me to an attorney named Jay Kramer, who just got fired from Madonna. Madonna just fired this guy, called him incompetent. And Mike Goldberg introduced us. So Jay Kramer then found this record label, small little label called Jive Records, with a president named Barry Weiss. The A&R for the label, the person who deals with all the artists, was a woman named Ann Carly. They called her Tokyo Rose. Ann Carly was the one who, well, I'll put it this way. She was the one. She was the one who made sure everybody's record actually came out in the studio. Houdini was her big group. She had put out Houdini. She had put out Houdini was really all they had at the time. As far as major rap group, that was their biggest group, and Ann Carly was sort of overseeing them. And so when I came with this record, Stop the Violence, Ann Carly loved the record. She's the one that demanded that it become a single, pull it off the album. She made it a single, was really pushing the idea of stopping violence through hip-hop in that sense. So she then came to me, we was on the Dope Jam tour. So this is now 1988. The record comes out, and we're on this tour called the Dope Jam Tour. And it's Ice-T, Biz Markie, KRS as the openers, and Eric B. and Rakim, Dougie Fresh, and somebody else as the headliners. I think it was Kool Moe Dee as the headliner, and who was also on Jive. Forgot about him. And we're on this tour. And so when the tour ends in New York at a place called Nassau Coliseum, a guy gets stabbed for his gold chain, snatching gold chains off necks and snatching gold earrings out of ears was the going criminal fashion in 1987. And so at this concert that Ann Carly was at, she witnessed a guy get his chain snatched and stabbed. The guy was died there in the hospital later. And Ann Carly was moved by this. And she said there got to be a way for us to influence these people, this hip-hop community, through the music. And she came to me with tears in her eyes saying, this has got to stop. And she said, I want to take your record, Stop the Violence, and make a movement out of it. Get all the rappers together to do this. And she said, but it can't happen unless you lead it. You have to do it. And at first I didn't want to have much to do with it because I was more reluctant. I was like, these people ain't nobody really interested in stopping violence or knowing God or having any kind of discipline, wisdom, knowledge, charity, mercy, forgiveness. At this point, I was, sort of done with humanity in that way. And it was Ann Carly, Asian woman, by the way, and she brought me back to my love for humanity. She said, let's do this. Let's make this record a movement. And the one thing I wanted in return was that that D Nice produced the record and that Miss Melody is on the record. Because those were the two groups that I was promoting at the time. And I said, fine. And she said, fine, no problem. And D Nice wound up producing the record, did a very good job, and Miss Melody wound up being on the record. And again, a very good job. And then I called up everybody. Ann Carly called up some people, as well as Nelson George, black man, Nelson George, who used to write for Billboard magazine, used to write in the R&B section. He, too, had a passion for this. And between the three of us, Nelson George, Ann Carly, and KRS-One, the Stop the Violence movement was created. It really had very little to do with Scott LaRock and his death. It had more to do with hip-hop in general, and this woman, Ann Carly, and her wanting hip-hop to have this message in it, in that sense. Now, since then, I've championed the movement. I've been sort of the loudest voice for the Stop the Violence movement in that sense. And so, that's why it's equated with me. And then also it came out really directly after Scott LaRock was killed. So in history, it kind of looks that way. But in reality, they're two separate vines, so to speak.
And then the Self-Destruction song came out of this movement?
Right. Out of the movement, when all the artists came together, we recorded a record called Self-Destruction. And this is what we was telling the hip-hop community. You are headed for self-destruction. And this also, keep in mind, because people think that hip-hop has no governance to it, that hip-hop is just anything goes. And this is a corporate strategy, and people need to know that this is a corporate strategy, this anything goes in hip-hop. That's not how hip-hop treats itself. That's not how hip-hop looked at itself. It starts itself with Kool Herc. And Kool Herc then gives the power to Africa Bambaataa, who then gives the power to Grandmaster Flash. And with each succession that we come through with these icons, we grow. And we try to keep a continuity in our culture. We love hip-hop. This is ours. This is what we built in that sense. And I say that to say that since the beginning of hip-hop has been kept together by a group, by a small group of people who were there from the beginning and continue to put that beginning into hip-hop, keep that beginning in hip hop. Keep its original spirit in that. So you look back to Kool Herc in '73. You look at Bam. You look at everybody going up, even to the Sugar Hill Gang, going up even to us and Eric B. and Rakim and Public Enemy. All of these people know. All of them. Chuck D is no fool. Neither is Rakim. All of them know what the original intent of hip hop is. When Rakim spelt out MCing, EMCEE, a repetition of words, check out my melody. This was not just him rhyming. This was a strategic thing he did. If you interview Rakim about that, he'll tell you, he'll break you down and tell you this was deliberate. We were not guessing hip hop. We were deliberate with it because we knew exactly what it was and where it came from. And so movements like the Stop the Violence movement are inspired by people like Ann Carly, who also, by the way, was a radio DJ and a member of Zulu Nation, by the way. So she knew how hip-hop was supposed to respond to a dude getting his chain snatched and murdered, basically murdered for his chain, his gold chain. She knew how to respond to that because she was part of that movement, that original movement of peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. She was part of that. And so I then continued it on. I was already doing it in my own way. So was Ice-T. So was, a lot of people. But we all did it in our own way. KRS-One is sort of the most consistent or most blatant one who just said, let's just do what we knew we were supposed to do with hip-hop. We knew we were supposed to put out the Stop the Violence movement. We knew it in our soul. And Carly is just the one who put that soul together, financed it, organized it, put the artists together, and actually did the work. And now we got this record, Self-Destruction. And when it came out, it was brilliant. It hit the whole world. It was amazing. Surprisingly enough, black radio didn't want to play it. BET said it was too long. The record never played on BET, Self-Destruction. Self-Destruction played on Yo MTV Rap. And MTV was considered the white corporate version of anything that music had to offer. And BET was considered black entertainment television. This is where you're supposed to be getting the core black entertainment from here. And surprisingly enough, when we put out the Self-Destruction record, BET was not the first to play it. The first to play it was MTV, Yo MTV Raps. And
did they reject also the West Coast version? They were all in the same gang, or they did play that?
No, BET wound up playing all of it. But the first time, and I don't know how they received All in the Same Gang. I don't know. I wasn't part of the promotion of that. I influenced that record to occur. When we did Self-Destruction, a guy named Mike Concepcion asked me for the permission to do the one that they did. And of course, I said, come on, man, y'all got to do that here. And I also worked with the organizers of that record, who, by the way, were also members of Zulu Nation, under the leadership of Africa Bambaataa. They knew how to respond, and this is also part of the meeting we had about, be like 4 years earlier in '87. Remember the meeting I told you about with Ice-T? This is the culmination of that meeting. When we put out the Self-Destruction, the West Coast responded with All in the Same Gang. Not only was that the name of the movement, that was also the name of the record. I then further followed up after that in '91 with Human Education Against Lies, Heal. We put out a record called Heal Yourself, which was the last of these conglomerate records, these records with major stars all on it rapping, in that way. That was sort of the last of those kinds of records being done. We was arguing that technology was beginning to take over civilization. This was the beginning of the internet and all of that. We was about 5-6 years ahead. We already knew that the military was getting ready to capture the world with an internet. And we began to speak about it in 91 when the first Gulf War was announced by then President Bush Sr. And we immediately started warning our people against the propaganda that America started to feel. And it's this technology starting to take over rational human thought and emotion and feeling. And this is all well documented in hip-hop's history in that sense. So, and I mention that again just to say that, this is an ongoing movement. Even after the 1991, just to give a chronology to it, you have the meeting of the minds in 1987 with Africa Bambaataa at Latin Quarters, where we get our first instructions. Then you have from 87 to 89, you have the self-destruction record coming out, going further with this movement. Then in 1990, you have All in the Same Gang. In 1991, you have Human Education Against Lies. And then 92, the Gulf War is on and popping. And you'll notice we put out a thing called BDP Live Hardcore. Actually, it came out in 91, but it wouldn't become popular till 92, which was it was called BDP Live Hardcore. And in that, we started warning people about the upcoming disaster that America was about to face over the next 20 some odd years in that sense. And after 92, everything changed. The West Coast exploded. The sound of hip-hop changed. We were prepared for it. We prepared for it in 87 as well. We was also looking at Dr. King's prophetic speech. I won't get into it here, but you can read the Gospel of Hip-Hop. There's a section called The Promised Land, where we lay out there how we were following Dr. King's speech where he says, "Let freedom ring," and we would know where hip-hop was to go based on each place that Dr. King said where freedom would ring. We knew that hip-hop would wind up in each of these places in its travels. And so we knew the West Coast was going to be the next spot. We knew that. And so we went there and prepared the way. And sure enough, in the 90s, the West Coast exploded, and exploded in huge ways. And so we started to ride the West Coast situation right there in 92, 93. Of course, a civil war broke out in hip-hop between 93 to about 97. There was this huge war between East and West Coast.
Bad Boy and Death Row.
Right. And I would say, we would say most people, most scholars, you're correct in what you're saying between Bad Boy and Death Row. But I would argue that it was actually a civil war between East and West Coast. It was an East Coast, West Coast feud. What was bubbling, and it was so weird, because around 93, the West Coast blew up, and everybody loved the new West Coast sound. Dr. Dre, we already knew about NWA. We already loved Ice Cube. Everybody already went through, but it's not Ice Cube yet. We already knew about NWA. And so right when the 90s start hitting, and it wasn't just about Bad Boy and Death Row. You had King T. Well, wait a minute. First you had Too Short out of Oakland, California. And Daddy-O from Stetsasonic was the first person to make us aware that this guy named Too Short is selling records out his car, selling cassettes out his car of some new kind of rap, some other kind of way to express rap, and it's real nasty and southern, and he was explaining it to us at the 1987 meeting of the minds with Africa Bambaataa. He was explaining that. And so now 92, 93, 94 is coming in, and you have Ice-T. Ice-T, come on, Ice-T was there already with Colors and 6 in the Morning. You had King T. You had Too Short. You had other groups like MC Hammer and 357. You had other groups like DOC, who was down with Dre and them, but wasn't really NWA like that. You had all these different groups coming out of the West Coast at the time. Now, keep in mind what the mainstream saw was right around 92 to 93. The West Coast blows up. And why? Because they start selling records. But on the cultural side, we already knew the West Coast was going to blow up because we was hearing the MCs, and we was going to the West Coast all the time. So we already knew the West Coast was going to blow up, and we was already trying to get in on it from the beginning of that. And if you notice, a lot of the dudes that blew up with the West Coast all had East Coast managers. Most of these dudes had East Coast managers that was showing them what it was, or had some New York dude in their crew that was showing them what it was with hip-hop, what to do, what not to do in that sense. And so when the East Coast-West Coast feud jumped off, it was East Coast-West Coast because you had a guy like Tim Dog who put out a record called Fuck Compton. And that was huge. Record was big. It was big in Compton.
And then Dre and Snoop replied to him.
And Dre and Snoop replied to him like, yo. And that had nothing to do with Bad Boy. It had nothing to do with Bad Boy. There was a bubbling beef going on between East Coast MCs and West Coast MCs. And the point was that East Coast was saying, y'all corny. The way you sound, the way y'all dress, all them jerry curls in your hair. We was criticizing West Coast and the South. And that's the truth. The East Coast was arrogant about being the first, about being number one, about the ones establishing hip-hop. And we was telling the rest of the nation, you need to bow down. And that's the truth. And so the West Coast was like, nah, we know real hip-hop. You dudes come to the West, and we treat y'all like kings. We give y'all money. Y'all don't get robbed out here. You go eating chicken and waffles. Come on, man. How you trying to play us now? We want to rap, too. Why we can't rap because we got an accent? So they started coming out and showing their accent and showing their khakis and bringing the gang culture in and showing you that when Snoop came out with that bow wow wow yippee yo ain't just rose in the motherfucking house. Yeah. That was hot. This was hot. This was real. So it was like, for real East Coast dudes, they had no problem on the West Coast. Had no problem. No problem whatsoever. It was these new executives now that started to come in, see that the West Coast was blowing up, and magazines like The Source and Vibe hyped up a beef between Death Row and Bad Boy. That was the beef. That's what mainstream saw. They saw that. Now, we was battling on the streets. We was battling. Records were going back and forth. Shows were getting done. Certain things were getting said. This was happening. There was animosity from East Coast to West Coast, and really to anybody who wasn't from New York, really. Anybody, even Philadelphia had to battle New York to get their respect with Steady B and Cool C and Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince and Cash Money, DJ Cash Money. Philadelphia had to battle New York before New York even gave Philly respect. They had to take out some New York DJs, Cash Money and DJ Jazzy Jeff, before even Will Smith was respected in hip hop as a rapper, before we would even listen to them. So, you know, and then Miami, just to keep the scholarship going, there was Philly had to battle, Chicago had to battle, and Miami had to battle, all in order to be recognized by hip hop as being East Coast hip hop. All of them had to battle, and they all battled and contributed something to the battle. Washington, D.C. battled and contributed go-go music with groups like Trouble Funk and all these groups, EU and all these groups that was coming out. Miami battled and came with the Miami bass sound off Africa Bambaata's Planet Rock sound. Miami bass sound came up, and they got their chance in the hip-hop. Chicago came with that twister style of rhyming like that. Plus, Chicago was known for house music, and house music kind of won hip-hop over as well on that level. So Chicago and Chicago-style MCing was also then accepted, when you get Kanye West now and Twista and Common and all of these Chicago MCs that put mad work into hip hop, big work. If you go all the way up to Toronto and Canada, Toronto MCs had to battle in order to be heard. Groups like Michie Me and Rumble and Strong, dudes like that, promoters like Ron Nelson, who used to promote the battles between New York and Toronto and get those battles on. All these regions had to battle first, all through the 80s and some of the 90s, in order to be respected as real hip-hop. And they all were accepted. All of them were accepted. Now the West Coast comes. On the street, we already knew they was real hip-hop. They just battling the show that they deserve to be here now. There was never no beef. There was never no, I'm going to shoot you, you going to shoot me. It was never that. It's just the way you enter hip-hop. It's the way you enter. You enter with strength. You enter with confidence, and you contribute your confidence to hip-hop. That's what you contribute. So when Dre and them came, they knew the rules. They knew the rules already, and they came up. Look at Tupac. Tupac is from Queens, from New York. Tupac's from Queens, from New York, okay? If you look at the DVD, Thug Angel, you'll notice that Tupac says, when I was growing up, my fathers was Big Daddy Kane and KRS-One. These were my fathers. And why does he say me and Kane were his fathers? Because Kane was 5%er, and his name was King Asiatic, nobody's equal. That's the real meaning of Kane. And KRS was knowledge reigned supreme over nearly everyone. Tupac comes from that realm. He comes out of that corner. And he says he came out of that and went with Digital Underground, who was also part of the movement, Shock G. To this day, Shock G is a revolutionary to this day. And he got down with Digital Underground first, got taught his lessons. As you know, Tupac's whole history, being part of the Black Panther movement, his mother, Afeni Shakur, everything that he went through, his whole transformation as a man, the knowledge he was pursuing, his music, everything about Pac, you already know he represented the movement going back as far as Kool Herc and Africa Bambaataa. That's what his movement was about. Now, Biggie, on the other hand, represented more of a mainstream approach to hip-hop and rap music. Bad Boy, one of the greatest to do it in terms of picking up where Russell left off. Puffy, Sean Puffy Combs, always said in interviews he wanted to be better than Russell Simmons. He wanted to do what Russell did, have his own company and have his own artists out. And he was first an assistant for Andre Harrell, for Heavy D, running around behind them, learning the game, learning what it was. And when he got his break with Mary J. Blige, he got his break with Mary, he got his break with Craig Mack, he got his break with Total, he got his break with Biggie, he got his break with maybe a few other people as well. You know, in the early days, really the early days, I think it was really just about, it was actually Jesse West and Craig Mack and Biggie and Mary that was like the beginning of Bad Boy as far as we know in terms of hip-hop history. Of course, Puffy would have to speak for his own company in this particular part of the scholarship. But as far as we know in hip-hop history, it starts off with Puffy leading the way, and it's Jesse West, it's Biggie, it's Craig Mack, and it's Mary. And Puffy's growing on the backs of these artists. Now, these artists are real hip-hop, no question about it. Biggie is hip-hop. Mary always been hip-hop in that sense. When they were coming out, the theme of Bad Boys, though, was diamonds, girls, drinking. The reason we know about diamonds and ice is because of Bad Boy. The reason we know about Cristal and fancy cars and getting out of helicopters and pushing $300,000 yachts is because of Bad Boy, because of Biggie, and really just because of Biggie, because Craig Mack was still more of an MC's MC. He stayed kind of the authentic MC. Mary J. Blige was destined for superstardom because she was a female singing. And that was just where it was supposed to go. Biggie, on the other hand, was the drug dealer. He was the one openly telling you, I'm selling crack right here because my daughter got to eat. I'm selling the crack. That's it. And I got to do this. And he's telling you stories about selling crack. Now, keep this in mind. Now, this is not a criticism. This is just the truth. So that the listener can put a perspective of hip-hop in their mind, the true perspective, okay? Now, remember when I told you about the beginning of hip-hop, how we was against crack? We saw crack coming into the community, and KRS-One did one of the first songs called Crack Attack for this Rock Candy Records, warning the community, don't get involved with crack cocaine. It's going to destroy your life. Don't get involved with that. This is the culture speaking. But then corporate, some MCs say, well, you know what? I'm going to say what we shouldn't say because it's going to, that's the daring. That's what's going to make me valuable. That's what's going to make me stand out from everybody else. So you know culturally hip-hop is against crack. You know culturally, even though we got crack dealers in our culture, even the crack dealer knows he's doing the wrong thing. Even they know, anybody know that sells crack. No real crack dealer wants to sell crack. And anybody you run up on, they say, I want to do this, dude. This is how I'm getting down. They stupid. They deserve to get shot in the street just like that. They're stupid. Real G's, real gangsters ain't trying to do that. They have to. They have no choice. This is where they are in their lives. This is where they've become. And they're looking for any opportunity to get away from that life. Any opportunity. So here comes hip-hop. And a lot of dudes that were selling crack in hip-hop, not in hip-hop, selling crack, period, in New York. When rap came out, they was like, yo, I'm giving that up, and I'm going into this. I'm getting legit. That's why so many rappers rap about crack or rap about their times, the originals, not today, or not in the 90s. You know, we're talking about the late 90s. We're talking about people like Scarface. We're talking about Fat Joe. We're talking about 50 Cent. We're talking about, you know, Wu-Tang. We're talking about real G's. People who we know in New York really was on the corner moving weight.
Yeah, Biggie,
real.
like Biggie said, either you sling crack, sell crack, rhyme, or you got a wicked jump shot. Like those.
Right, exactly, and that was it. But that's the truth. That was it for us in the hood. So if you really was out there selling crack, you was waiting for somebody to come and say, "Yo, you want to go on tour? You got a rhyme?" You would drop your gun and that crack in a minute and be on tour with somebody. And that's why so many rappers had so many guys with them that was, you know, selling or sell, you know, toting guns or, you know, coming out of that life. They didn't really discipline their crew. A lot of people didn't really discipline their friends the way they were supposed to, and that's how rappers get in trouble. You know, you don't bring that old life into a new life and expect, you know, to make something of yourself, you know, in that sense. But I mentioned all of this just to bring up, go back to the East Coast, West Coast beef. Look at the two different styles of men that are arguing with each other, okay? Here you have a Black Panther and you have the drug dealer. Look at that. This is what hip-hop as a culture was dealing with at its time. We was dealing with the revolutionary is being corrupted by the drug game. And this is also a reoccurrence of what actually happened with the Black Panthers and others as well. Real revolutionaries with real ideas and a real cause gets corrupted by the drug gang. And here you have Tupac, who knows the truth, who was studying, but felt, and we noticed it after he did the movie Juice, everybody said his whole demeanor changed. His whole demeanor changed. And he became Bishop. He became the guy in the film. And I think he played that role so hard that he got stuck in that role.
The thug role?
Yes, the thug role. Before he played that role, Bishop, in Juice, Tupac was positive. He was on some Public Enemy X-Clan mission. He was with Digital Underground. He was that. He was laughing, having a good time with hip-hop, doing records like, you know, we're going to go meet a girl and doing that kind of
Brenda's
music.
Got a Baby.
Brenda Got a Baby. This is what Tupac was on. Then he did this movie, Juice, and he played the role of a thug. And he got into it. And this is just the culture speaking. This is what we all said. Hundreds of people that knew Tupac had all said, we don't speak like this no more about Tupac. But that's why I'm saying it to you now. This is forgotten knowledge. But when it occurred, when the movie Juice was out, and after it was, you know, it came and it went, and Tupac still was acting like Bishop.
I thought it was like the Suge Knight getting involved that turned him around.
No. Suge Knight had nothing to do with that. It was this movie Juice and his role as Bishop. And he played this role. And after he played that role, Tupac's whole demeanor changed. This was before Suge Knight. This before Death Row. He was already thugging. He had already put the thug life on. He'd already, you know, this is what it was. And he was saying, we got to unite these black men in the hood, straight Black Panther style. But then Bishop took over. And when Bishop took over and Tupac, he quit Digital Underground and became Tupac. And got this other group with him, started running with a group of dudes called the Outlaws, who are a rap group to this day, still doing their thing, called the Outlaws. And they turned thug life into a philosophy. Thug meaning trying hard under God. That's what thug means. That's what thug life means. Trying hard under God life. The trying hard under God life. That's what Tupac meant when he said thug life. That's what it meant. And so they were trying to come out the way we came out in Criminal Minded. We came out as thug revolutionaries. Revolutionaries, Black Panther style, but we still in the street. We philosophers and metaphysicians, but we still in the street. We tote guns. We know about the crack dealer, but we ain't down with it, but we all in the same environment. That image in hip-hop, Tupac took that on and then became Bishop. And so he started walking down this path of preaching black unity on one level, but then beating up other black men on another level. And this is where he got caught up in being a thug. And then he met Death Row, linked up with Death Row. And everyone knows the story on that. Why he linked up, how he linked up. He's in jail. This guy gets him out. There's a rape charge that gets him there. There's all this. And, he starts going through all of this now, one thing after the other. And so with all of that going on, okay, at the same time, Biggie's blowing up. Diamonds, Cartier wristwear, black and ugly as ever. However, I say Gucci down to the rocks, down to the socks. Rings and watch full of rocks. Plus my jam knocks in your Mitsubishi. Girls see me in they TV. Navajos creep me. I mean, just Biggie was one of the best. Absolutely. But what he was saying was that commercial mainstream get money. Tupac was saying, let's unite on the streets, drug dealers and gangs. They went at it, each other. They had their battle. They were battling on their own. Then, and actually the battle started because Tupac felt that Biggie set him up.
And he got shot?
He got shot in Quad's studio, and he felt Biggie and this guy set him up like that. And that's what Pac always says and always maintains, that these people set him up and got him shot in that sense. Or they knew something about it or something, but they were not his friends when he got shot. That's what Pac says. That's what his argument is. In fact, Freddie Fox actually has 4 letters written by Tupac from prison to Freddie Fox, implementing everyone that he feels wants him dead. And so the Temple of Hip Hop has copies of these letters as well. But the point is that the East Coast West Coast feud had several layers to it that all seem to have linked up like a universal destiny. Hip-hop itself was arguing with the West Coast. East Coast arrogance was causing the West Coast to defend itself. In that sense, there was MC beats and breaking beats. Rocksteady crew was going at it with the LA Breakers. Long beef that they was having in that sense. That's just a silent one, but during that time, it was a breaking battle going on, too, during that time. And MCs were battling. Then you had the magazines, Vibe and Source, vying with each other, battling each other for magazine sales. They blow up a feud that could have been put to the side, but they made each of Tupac and Biggie, they made them and their camps keep having to throw more gasoline on the fire, more wood for the fire, more wood for the fire. Every month we're reading about Biggie said this, Tupac said that, Faith slept with Tupac. She said no, she didn't. Mary J. Blige is with Suge Knight now. This one is with that one. Every other week it was something, and nothing about peace. Nothing about reconciliation. Nothing about we as a hip-hop community should come together and stop this nonsense. Of course, KRS-One's voice was loud in this. Of course, Dr. Dre's voice was loud in this. Chuck D's voice was loud in this. They ignored it. Tupac ignored it. Biggie ignored it.
That's what I was curious about. If you talked to Biggie and Pac during this time, you were already a well-respected MC, so I'm curious to know where were you in this era?
I was screaming. I was screaming at the top of the highest mountain, and that mountain at the time was Hot 97 in New York. That was the epitome of hip-hop at the time in the 90s. I was the voice of the station, and I was saying, we have to stop this. Stop it now. And no one would hear. See, look, it's just like today. Like right now, I'm saying, yo, hip-hop, come together. We are a nation, hip-hop. We are a community, an international community. Let us come together around the principles of peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. Let us take more responsibility for what we say on the mic, especially when young people are around. Let's use our art wisely. If it's just us around, or let's say any old thing we want to say and have fun with our art. But if we know our children are listening to us, let's inspire them to be better than who we are. Now, that has been KRS-One's stance and his policy since he came out in 1986. Okay? If I say that today, which is what I have said today, okay, look at the artists that are out today. Do they give two...
You can say it.
They could care less about KRS-One's gospel of hip-hop. They could care less about the temple of hip-hop. They could care less about this. They are in their own minds, doing their own thing. And they will benefit or suffer based upon their own consciousness. But you can't say that within hip-hop there was no voice, there was no person, there was no writing, there was no records done, no videos, no PSAs, nothing. You can't say that did not exist during this time.
I remember Dr. Dre doing a song with Nas right in the middle of all this thing.
It was called East Coast Killer, West Coast Killer, and I was on that record with Nas as well, and we all jumped on it and tried to put something out to quell this beef. Big up to Nas, by the way. He, too, was yelling, what are y'all doing? This is stupid. Nas was the biggest one talking, telling people, this is crazy, we got to stop this. Why? I go to the West Coast all the time, and I ain't got no problem. It's nothing with... Nas was screaming out from the beginning. But see, look at who Nas is. Nas is from the tree. He's cut from the same root. I mean, look at what he's representing. You know, like, look at his representation. Nostradamus and God's son and all that. I mean, Nas knows. He knows what it is. He's cut from the original culture root.
And he was dissed by both Big and Pac, right?
Yeah. He was friends with both of them.
But he was already dissed by them, right?
Yes,
later.
Yes, he was dissed. He was dissed later, yeah. I mean, but that's the point. They all hang out and they wind up dissing each other in that sense. Yeah, he both, same thing with Buckshot. Buckshot was down with Tupac, and Biggie, he had a fight with Biggie in D&D studio. Biggie rolled up on him in D&D studio. In that sense. I mean, now I'm quite sure Puffy and Bad Boy and Buckshot and them are cool. It ain't no big deal now, you know. Buckshot must have went to the funeral for Biggie and shout. I know he shouts him, you know, wherever he go. So this is how hip hop is. This is how we do, you know, in that sense. And it's important that people understand the culture of hip-hop so that when the mainstream corporate interprets that culture in an attempt to sell a CD or sell a DVD, you know what you're getting. It's not like the DVD or the CD is not real. It is real. But it is real. It is real. But there's always more to the story. There's always more to the story. You could get the press release that says, you know, Biggie and Tupac had a feud and it cost them their lives. And there was, you know, Death Row and Bad Boy and, you know, suspicions about who killed what and who did who. And you could go with that, and that's real. And there's DVDs out, there's investigations, there's lawsuits, and everything is still even pending. This is all real. But the culture doesn't look at that as what was important. The culture looks at the fact that two kinds of images in our culture canceled each other out. The revolutionary going up against the gangster gets both the revolutionary and the gangster killed. That's the lesson we learned. This is the lesson, that we are supposed to exist in harmony. Then imagine if Tupac and Biggie did a record together. I think they did do a record
Before
together.
that, there's also the famous recording, the Where Brooklyn At.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. But I mean, like, you know, an album, like the way Kanye and Jay-Z did something like that, you know, and, you know, but this is the importance of cultural knowledge when dealing with any group of people, really. But with hip-hop, this is the importance of it, because a lot of young people, they want to be part of hip-hop. They want to be, you know, they want to be hip-hop. But like any culture, if you don't know your original culture first, the culture of your parents, it's going to be difficult for you to understand hip-hop culture in that sense. You'll always just be a rapper or a DJ. Most people, they rebel against the culture of their parents and say they're joining hip-hop. And when they get here, they find that hip-hop points them right back to the culture of their parents, because it was something they was missing back there that they had to go get in order to now understand hip-hop. And that culture, it has to do with loyalty. It has to do with understanding beyond words, having a relationship with an idea, not a person.